Good morning, everybody. This is a live extreme weather briefing with a lot to talk about so far today. We've got Tropical Storm Beta here in the western Gulf of Mexico that continues to churn, basically steady state overnight, but definitely evolving as well. It was battling some westerly wind shear for the last couple of days, and that led to a tilted circulation from the low levels up to the convection. And in fact, it's even been peeling off little blobs of convection and sending those up toward Louisiana. Here's one of those convergence bands located east of the cyclone, which appears to be getting a little better organized this morning, as there is a reduction of that westerly wind shear that has been westerly at about 20 knots in a storm relative sense, and that's what's been giving this system a tilt from the low levels up to the convective blobs. But now it does appear to be wrapping in this new area of convection that continues to expand. It's a little bit closer to the center, but you can definitely notice some dry air well to the west of Tropical Storm Beta, and that's going to likely be a limiting factor to prevent rapid intensification as this thing approaches the coastline, and it looks like a little bit of a quicker arrival to the Texas coast. Many of those models now are showing a landfall during the day tomorrow as a tropical storm. National Hurricane Center has the official landfall at 60 miles an hour, basically steady state on approach to that coastline, but you could definitely see the spin here. This is the overall cyclone, and it does appear to be getting more vertically stacked, more vertically oriented. I know that we've said that here over the last couple of days, whereas this convection will form near the center, and then it battles a bit of storm relative wind shear at about 20 knots in the mid and upper levels, and then it sends that convective blob over to the east, where you have this basically a convergence band that continues to pump Louisiana with heavy rain. And the European model actually has the heaviest rainfall totals from this system up in Louisiana because of these predecessor events, or I guess you could say it's almost in the wake of this system, but a predecessor rain event happening up there in Louisiana. And now the models have been backing off just a bit on the rainfall associated with the so far the sheared core, inner core of Tropical Storm Beta, and also this dry air off to the west of it. That's really what the models are picking up on, and preventing that rapid intensification on approach to the coast, like a Harvey did a couple of years ago back in 2017, where the models were showing a weaker storm, and then it gradually underwent intensification and then rapidly intensified on approach to Rockport, just to the north of Corpus Christi. And then became a meandering tropical cyclone that actually came back out over the water near the Houston area. Dozens and dozens of tornadoes reported from Hurricane Harvey, and I think that the main threats here with Tropical Storm Beta are going to be a general 2 to 4 foot storm surge along the Gulf Coast, especially this large section of the Texas coast up toward Cameron Parish. Bolivar Peninsula is likely going to be surged over with that 2 to 4 foot storm surge. There's already been some coastal flooding observed so far this morning along the upper Texas coast and up through Cameron Parish. And that's going to continue with this big onshore flow here happening all the way on the north side of the tropical cyclone. And I'm a little bit concerned that the forecast models are underdoing precipitation along the Texas coast from Houston back toward the Rockport area, because it does look like there is quite a bit of convection here forming on the north side of this tropical cyclone, and all of this is just going to continue to come ashore in waves as the tropical cyclone gets closer and closer. But it is initiating this westerly motion now after just meandering here in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, as we have that high pressure that is beginning to solidify to the north of it, that is encouraging this motion on the south side of that anticyclone to the west. And then there's an upper low that's going to arrive. That's going to spread some west-southwesterly flow aloft, some west-southwest to northeast steering, and that's going to cause this turn to the northeast, just inland along the Texas coast, and that's going to bring a lot of rainfall through the Houston area, as well as central and southern Louisiana. And I'm going to show you all the different models, exactly what they show in terms of rainfall. I'm going to break down the steering currents with this. We're also going to look at Hurricane Teddy, which now has 105 maximum sustained winds. Hurricane Teddy is heading off to the north and appears like it could have impacts with Nova Scotia early next week, probably as a transitioning tropical cyclone, basically a post-tropical storm, but could definitely get some gusty winds in Halifax and especially the eastern side of Nova Scotia, probably 50, 60, 70 mile an hour winds. So certainly an impactful event possible there. But you can see that this tropical cyclone, as it's starting to get a reduction in the vertical wind shear, allowing more convection to form near the center, instead of forming near the center and just getting kicked off to the east by that storm relative wind shear, it does appear to be getting more vertically stacked. And I could show you the just how healthy the convection is near the center too, looking at infrared satellite. And you can certainly see this big blob of convection here that's now just to the north of the center. The center is very generally located in this region, so it's not a very compact inner core, but it is a large circulation, and that's going to lead to a pretty substantial storm surge well away from that center. Basically in this concave portion of the shoreline is a very storm surge prone area. Bolivar Peninsula is one of those storm surge prone areas, located just to the east, on the east side of Galveston Bay, kind of the southeast portion of that bay. But the Bolivar Peninsula is a very storm surge prone area, so I do expect impactful surge across many of those storm surge prone areas across eastern Texas. But I don't think that it's going to become a hurricane anymore. The hurricane intensity models have been showing this the entire time, and I believe that they've been picking up on that blob of dry air that's located just to the west of this tropical cyclone, and it has been battling wind shear as well throughout its life cycle. But you got this predecessor rain event that did come up into southeastern Louisiana. That does appear to be weakening just a bit. You can see some of these cloud tops as it's coming into the southeastern portion of Louisiana. But now it does look like the precipitation is starting to consolidate around this inner core, which I could see some subtle strengthening during the day today. But then as this tropical cyclone approaches the Texas coast, that's when I really think it's going to start to interact with that dry air, the dry blob of air that's located over the southern plains. And just as I'm doing this briefing, I am hearing from Mike Tice that we do have the Windy Palms data that has become available. We need to analyze that data, but it does show also a minimum pressure of 968 millibars. The maximum wind speed, we're a little bit concerned that there was some sheltering on the east side of those very large condos that are out there at Gulf Shores. And when we deployed the Windy Palms in Gulf Shores, we did expect a direct landfall in Dauphin Island or maybe even Pascagoula, so we thought there would be pure onshore flow at that location. However, it does look like there were some wake eddies that formed on the west side of those big condominium complexes from those big easterly winds that were ripping in the northern eye wall. But here is the latest as of 9 a.m. With Tropical Storm Beta. Basically, maximum sustained winds continue to be at 60, well, they're up to 60 miles an hour now. There you go. And that minimum pressure has definitely dropped. 996 millibars per the latest analysis. And there is expected to be a little bit of intensification during the day today, but should remain below hurricane intensity. And you definitely can see these colder cloud tops here, convective blob that is developing in the vicinity of the center, or at least on the north semicircle of that circulation. And the fact that this dry air is coming into the southern half of the circulation tells me that already Tropical Cyclone Beta could be pulling in some dry air off of the southern plains from the mainland, and that's going to be a mitigating factor that's going to prevent rapid intensification as this storm system approaches. So let's bounce around a little bit. That was the satellite imagery. We're going to look at the radar imagery, of course, as well. But first I want to show you this peak surge map from the National Hurricane Center. And this shows a very general storm surge of about 2 to 4 feet just to the right of center, basically north of Port Aransas. This is where Hurricane Hannah came ashore. But all of these inlets here are going to be surged substantially as well, including these up here in the Cameron Parish area. Once again, a 2 to 4 foot storm surge is expected all the way through south central Louisiana, even a 1 to 3 foot storm surge, which is already happening right now in the Bay St. Louis area. I'm sure that location where we started off our coverage of Hurricane Sally is already getting flooded with a few feet of water. Southeastern Louisiana, Plaquemine Parish, down toward Venice, Grand Isle are going to have a 1 to 3 foot storm surge. But the most substantial storm surge is going to be near where that center comes in tomorrow. And but the surge is already underway today, and it's just going to continue through the day today, overnight tonight, and tomorrow across multiple high tide cycles throughout this Texas coastline near basically north of Port Aransas up through Cameron Parish all the way into south central Louisiana. But a 2 to 4 foot storm surge is definitely an impactful storm surge. Will cause a lot of coastal flooding, big problems out there. And in fact, on social media, I've already seen many reports of high water, Bolivar Peninsula, back around Galveston Bay, Cameron Parish. So that flooding is already happening, and that's because of the relatively large size of this tropical cyclone. And the main impacts with a tropical storm like this that are moving so slow are the flooding rains and, of course, a tornado threat. There's definitely going to be a landfalling tornado threat when this system while it's coming ashore tomorrow. Starting late night tonight, tomorrow morning is when those water spouts are going to be possible, and that's going to include near the Houston area, Galveston Island, back toward Cameron Parish, back all the way to Port Aransas. Definitely some potential for those water spouts. And the models have been coming back a little bit with that rainfall, and a lot of that is because of the dry air that's located to the west of this circulation. And with that dry air, it certainly could cause a reduction in the rainfall totals associated with the inner core of Beta. And in fact, the European model shows a majority of the rainfall coming into Louisiana with that predecessor rain event. And the GFS is also picking up on that rainfall across southeastern Louisiana, half of a foot of total rainfall from this. But this is very different than the 20 to 30 inch totals that we did anticipate across the Texas coastline. And there does seem to be agreement amongst all the forecast models of a reduction of rainfall across the East Texas coast. But it really doesn't take much in the Houston area to get substantial flooding with all those bayous. And there's really not a major metropolitan area that is more flood prone than Houston. And so I think that Houston is certainly going to flood from this system. And but the good news is that overall, with that dry air dominating the southern plains and Mexico out ahead of the system, it does look like it's not going to be this mega rain producer with a potential mega natural disaster that we anticipated before. But still, the GFS does show flooding rainfall coming into Louisiana, and including even further east across portions of the north central Gulf Coast. And those are regions that were hit hard by Hurricane Laura in southwestern Louisiana, and also here in coastal Alabama and the Florida Panhandle, expecting several inches of rainfall as well. And that depends on those feeder bands. Looking at satellite, though, I do see a couple of those feeder bands, one that's coming into southeastern Louisiana, and even some that are further east, that a lot of tropical moisture down in the Gulf of Mexico. And so I do expect rainfall to potentially impact those locations. But this is the GFS model, and here's the European, which shows even more rainfall across southeastern Louisiana, which would bring quite a bit of flooding into this region here, including New Orleans area. Rainfall totals there could be in excess of a foot, if you believe the European model. A lot less, though, for the core of Tropical Storm Beta that is forecast to approach the Texas coast tomorrow. And that is likely due to that dry air that will be entrained into the circulation starting tonight through tomorrow as Tropical Storm Beta gets closer to the coast. And even the NAM model, here is the NAM model, shows a reduction in those rainfall totals, probably 6 to 12 inches. Looks like the general rule from this core of Beta. But one thing I'm noticing right now is that there is a lot more convection that's forming on the north side of and near the center of Tropical Storm Beta. So I wouldn't be surprised if when these new models come out, they even show an increase in the rainfall totals across the central Texas coast up through Houston, up into southwestern Louisiana. The NAM is already showing a reduction of the rainfall totals in southeastern Louisiana, but a lot greater totals just offshore. But the NAM seems to be in agreement with radar and satellite trends with this predecessor rain band weakening on approach to southeastern Louisiana. And I bet as we get the 18Z models that are showing that more substantial convective blob developing near the center of Tropical Storm Beta, that we do see a resurgence of these rainfall totals up to the double-digit totals that the previous model runs were showing. So don't let your guard down just because the models are showing a little bit of a reduction in precipitation for the inner core of Beta. I still think that there's going to be substantial impacts with the system, and I think that we're going to see an increase in those precipitation totals for the inner core of Beta. This is the GFS solution, and this is from the Pivotal Weather website. But you could just see this really large circulation, large wind field as well. A lot of onshore flow impacting this region near Bay St. Louis, Waveland, Slidell. That's why with this onshore flow, you're getting coastal flooding well removed from the center of Tropical Storm Beta that is located due south right now, or south-southeast of Cameron, Louisiana, due east of Corpus Christi right now. But most of this flow so far in Texas is shore parallel, but as Tropical Storm Beta moves a little bit west overnight tonight and during the day tomorrow, those winds are going to shift to a more southeasterly direction. And that's when we're really going to see those 2 to 4 foot storm surges arrive near Galveston Bay, up through Bolivar Peninsula, up into Cameron Parish as well. And a little bit further south, out near the Port Lavaca area, is likely going to surge, a 2 to 4 foot storm surge from this system. But really none of the models are showing rapid intensification, even the ones that are normally most aggressive. This is later on this afternoon. And one thing to note is that this westerly motion, fairly consistent westerly motion, continues on the south side of this anticyclone that's anchored over the southern U.S. And it's a little bit faster than we saw with the previous run. So now most of the models are showing a landfall by tomorrow, late afternoon, early evening near the Port Lavaca area, as a relatively strong tropical storm with 60-mile-an-hour sustained winds. But look at all this onshore flow into Galveston Bay, all the way up into Cameron Parish as well. A lot of onshore flow here, and that's going to bring a 2 to 4 foot storm surge from Port Lavaca all the way up through Galveston Bay, up through Cameron Parish. These areas are going to have the worst surge and also rainfall. And it does show, the GFS and many of these models show a pretty small inner core of Tropical Storm Beta when it does arrive, and that's because of this blob of dry air that's located across the south central U.S. But it still shows these predecessor rain events hammering southern Louisiana, southeastern Louisiana, also into Galveston Bay. That's where that big onshore flow is going to happen, and that's where the most substantial storm surge is going to be, up to 4 feet there in the coastal regions with this onshore flow here, but a pretty compact inner core. Precipitation-wise, could hold down overall those rainfall totals, so we're not really expecting the 20 to 30-inch rainfall totals that we thought could have happened somewhere along the periphery of the Texas coast all the way up into Louisiana. But the models were definitely showing that predecessor rain event coming up there from south to north, just hammering southern Louisiana, southeastern Louisiana there. Might as well look at the NAM for fun. The NAM even has a bit faster solution than the GFS, making landfall by early afternoon, in fact, even late morning Monday. And I know we're not supposed to use the NAM model when looking at tropical cyclones, but still, I use it as a tool. The old trusty NAM, it's almost like an old pair of jeans that you wear, that you know how it's going to fit, you know how it's going to feel. Kind of like the Dominator 4, how I know how it smells and feels, and I'm sitting in there over 100,000 miles a year. The NAM is a good trusted model that I've used for many years. And it also shows a relatively compact inner core. And this is last night's European, so I'm still patiently awaiting the new European model. But last night's was still showing a slower solution, but it does seem like the 12Z models are showing an acceleration of beta, making landfall by late morning, early afternoon tomorrow. And a relatively compact inner core that definitely is feeling the effects of the dry air dominating the southern plains well out ahead of this cyclone. I have to wear these headphones because the person above me walks all day long and never leaves their apartment, but they just walk really loud up above me, and it's extremely distracting, so I basically have to wear these soundproof headphones in my apartment all day long. It's a real pain in the ass. But you got to do what you got to do to avoid confrontation. So let's look at some of this dry air that's located well ahead of this system over the southern plains. And this is why many of the models are really not showing much in the way of intensification. And you can see all this dry air that's located across Texas, the southern plains. Basically, you could definitely see the model trying to pull in this dry air too along the southern side of the circulation. That's probably why the southern side of the circulation is lacking convection too already. So even though the wind shear is sliding off to the east, as we analyzed during the briefing yesterday, as this tropical cyclone gets closer and closer to the coastline, it's going to continue to pull in this dry air into the south side of the circulation. That's going to prevent the inner core of Tropical Storm Beta from really taking off. But this is Monday morning, 12Z. You can still see just this giant blob of dry air over the southern plains. Probably with an origin somewhere over the southwestern U.S., this dry air. There's been a lot of wildfires out here, a lot of low relative humidity. Even here in Colorado, the monsoon season was almost completely non-existent, including the southwestern U.S. You had a couple moisture surges, but overall the monsoon was basically dead. And now you've got these dry blobs of air that are settling in across the southern plains and northern Mexico. And that's the reason why Beta is not going to intensify into a major hurricane as it approaches. It's not the wind shear. That wind shear is going to slide away and allow Beta plenty of time, 24 to 48 hours over the warm waters of the northwestern Gulf of Mexico to intensify. But the dry air that is out ahead of it is going to act as a negative factor to prevent that intensification. And eventually this upper low here over the Four Corners region is going to push east, and that will cause Beta to recurve to the northeast. Here you can see that upper level low that's coming. And gradually you get southwest to northeast steering flow, and that will lift Beta out of the region, but not before dumping quite a bit of rain. Storm surge as well. This is by Tuesday evening. Beta is still over East Texas, likely producing rainfall, heavy rainfall out there. And then this upper level low, energized by the tropical heat and moisture from Beta after spinning in the western Gulf of Mexico, is going to eject off to the northeast with a very moist warm sector, basically like an upper level low on steroids when you inject it with the low level moisture of a Beta. So someone's going to get hammered by flooding rainfall, likely from central northern Louisiana, central Mississippi into northern Alabama, maybe even Tennessee up there. Someone's going to get impactful rainfall as that system ejects. And there's Beta, even by Wednesday evening, still just spinning. Look at this massive sprawling high, too, that is attempting to block its ejection to the northeast. And basically, Beta just spins down. You have a re-solidification of that Bermuda high, but overall, Beta eventually just spins down there in the central Gulf Coast. But days of rainfall ahead. This is on Thursday evening. Still quite a bit of rainfall there near the circulation, and eventually Beta just dissipates. And here comes the jet stream, sagging south, the polar front jet. Maybe we'll get some fall severe weather and tornado potential coming up eventually, but we need a deeper trough than this. This isn't going to do much of anything in terms of develop an intense surface low or pump that Gulf moisture northward. This one could have some severe weather potential in the central U.S., but it seems like we're building back toward the western ridge and eastern trough in the long range, at least according to the GFS here. This could be a severe weather event, maybe in Dixie Alley to close out September, but looks like more like a cold side dominated type of a front surging off to the south, bringing a lot of cold air south. So Dixie Alley definitely could get a break with a surface cold front coming in to close out September. So let's look at the hurricane model intensity, and this is from the Tropical Tidbits website. We're back to Beta again after discussing some of the general pattern there. And the hurricane intensity models have been nailing this the entire time, basically keeping the intensity below hurricane strength. And most of the intensity models show that a tropical storm Beta has already peaked. Maybe a little bit of intensification during the day today with that convection on the north side wrapping around, but eventually it's going to start entraining in that dry air and then be a likely weaker tropical cyclone, or tropical, a weaker tropical storm when it approaches the coast during the day tomorrow in about 48 hours. Maybe 24 hours now. These are 12Z models, 18Z, 0Z tonight. So really it looks like these hurricane intensity models have picked up on the dry air to the west of this circulation the entire time. General agreement now amongst the hurricane models on that track on the south side of that high that is beginning to dominate the central and southern U.S. And then eventually that upper low arrives and encourages a turn to the northeast, although some of the models keep the remnants of beta down in this south central Gulf Coast region, bringing with it quite a bit of precipitation. But they do show that turn to the northeast right near the Houston area. And if there's any inner core left of beta, then there's going to be a flood event here, rainfall. We also have that storm surge, a lot of onshore flow to the east of that track. That'll be coming ashore there. Definitely going to see that as well. Overall, though, still tons of tropical systems that are out in the Atlantic, basically lit up like a Christmas tree out there. Teddy is going to be heading to the due north. That's going to be impacting Nova Scotia with some potentially damaging winds as that system is transitioning. However, it is going to miss Bermuda just to the east, thankfully. There's been some pretty incredible images of the Hurricane Hunter aircraft that have been flying through Teddy, showing that stadium effect as Teddy peaked a little bit earlier in the middle of the Atlantic. But Teddy's going to continue going north. It's going to move a little bit to the east of Bermuda, and then it's going to start to transition to an extratropical cyclone, getting picked up by that trough that right now is over eastern Canada and the northeast. It's going to phase with that trough and then eject off to the northeast, bringing with it a lot of wind to the eastern half of Nova Scotia and up toward Labrador. Is also going to get some big wind from this as that system transitions into a powerful extratropical cyclone across the northern Atlantic. We do have a new area of interest to watch, just a subtle upper level low there, little area of convection just off the Florida coast. That's going to bring a little bit of surge, a little bit of water rise, some onshore flow, and some rain across east central Florida, but really nothing too much to worry about. We've got Wilfred out here that is in a very harsh environment. There's an area of dry air and wind shear that is dominating the open Atlantic right now, and that's going to cause Wilfred to die a slow death and basically just peter out right here in the middle of the Atlantic. But that's what we're looking at. And then some good news is that we're about to enter in a relatively convectively suppressed phase of the Madden-Julian oscillation. That's going to move in to close out the month of September through early October with a convectively suppressed Atlantic during that time. But then I wouldn't be surprised to see a reinvigoration of the tropics to close out the season in October. But overall, this season has been characterized by a record-breaking number of tropical cyclones, but a relatively harsh open Atlantic in terms of wind shear, dry air, some upper level lows, and a Bermuda high that has a westward extension that will a lot of times move into the southeastern U.S. So any storms or disturbances that form in the Gulf of Mexico or the Caribbean have been a problem so far this season, but any storms that are forming from the train of disturbances coming off West Africa have encountered the very harsh environment there in the central Atlantic, and they've either recurved ahead of troughs that are moving through eastern Canada or the northeast, or they've just died out there because of the very harsh environment. But we've seen quite a number of disturbances. One thing that research has shown is that usually the number of disturbances coming off Africa is often conserved year to year. So you usually get the same number of storms that come off Africa every year. But how favorable are those conditions? That's definitely varies on a seasonal level. Water temperatures, though, depending on the base state that you select to calculate the anomalies, always seem to be above normal. So there's plenty of heat energy, oceanic heat energy. But whether these storms develop different than last year, the open Atlantic is a lot more harsh, whereas last year was incredibly favorable out there for the development of a very intense hurricanes, even pretty far out in the open Atlantic. And that's why many of those hurricanes ravaged these islands here to the north of the Greater Antilles, and even the northern part of the Lesser Antilles. Puerto Rico also had very powerful, mature hurricanes that made it all the way across. So definitely an active record-breaking year in terms of the number of storms. 2005 was another year that we moved into the Greek alphabet, but it was later on in the season. You may remember Hurricane Wilma. That was a record-breaking storm in terms of how quickly it intensified. This is the official NHC forecast track, bringing Teddy up to the eastern side of Nova Scotia by Wednesday morning, transitioning. So it's undergoing a transition to extratropical at this point, but missing Bermuda to the east. That's the important thing. We almost had two landfalls directly here back to back with Paulette and then Teddy. And it's incredibly rare to get direct hurricane landfalls on Bermuda because it's such a small island in the open ocean. But oftentimes the Bermuda High will dominate the central part of the Atlantic, and that will usually cause these systems to pass very close to Bermuda, if not right overhead, as those intense hurricanes. One of these years, I'm going to intercept a tropical cyclone in Bermuda, one of those really intense hurricanes. I definitely want to go out there. I don't think this is going to be my year to make it happen because of COVID and some other restrictions, but one of these days I'm going to head out to Bermuda and intercept one of those big time storms. So let's go back really quick now to satellite. It's interesting watching these tropical systems evolve on satellite. I'm very used to watching supercell storms, which evolve on a quick time scale. So you can look at one radar scan, and then 5 minutes later, you can go from nothing to suddenly a full-blown tornado. Meanwhile, mid-latitude cyclones evolve much more slowly, on the order of multiple days. So anytime you're looking at satellite or those models, there's less likely to be those big surprises that you'll see, at least in real time when you're viewing these. And then tropical cyclones are in between those two time scales. They evolve a lot more quickly than synoptic scale mid-latitude cyclones, but they evolve more slowly than supercell storms. But still, I find it incredible when you look at these high-resolution satellite images. Even just 5 or 10 minutes later, you notice so many differences. And one thing I'm noticing here is a compact inner core of this tropical storm that is much further west. Looks like it's vertically oriented. So it does appear that we could be getting some intensification of this tropical cyclone here this morning. 60-mile-an-hour winds, pressure down to 996 millibars. That was as of advisory number 12. Still supposed to be at 60 miles an hour this evening. And then this is by 6 a.m., still at 60 miles an hour, steady state. Coming in officially, according to the NHC track, at 6 p.m. The latest GFS and the 12Z NAM are a little bit faster, bringing this system ashore by late morning or early afternoon. And I'm still trying to decide if I'm going to be chasing this tropical system. It needs to be a little bit more intense, I think, for me to deploy out there, but I'm going to be watching it throughout the day today. With those footsteps walking above me, that person that never leaves their apartment. I don't understand living in Colorado and just being in your apartment all day long, annoying the people down below you, but that's what happens. But you can see these gravity waves starting to emanate from the convection. But definitely a steady west-northwesterly direction toward Port Lavaca, maybe a bit north of there. The track has shifted just slightly north from the track yesterday. But I am seeing a bit of an intensification trend just since we started this briefing with this system. Look at the still some shear here in the upper levels, as you can see these upper level clouds just getting taken from west to east in a storm relative sense. And you can see none of that cloud matter is going from east to west, except for this, which is almost behaving like a back-sheared anvil. But most of the cloud shield getting taken from west to east due to that 20 knots of storm relative shear. And even some predecessor rain events that the European thought was going to maintain its robustness well in to southeastern Louisiana. But one thing that satellite trends are showing is that most of the heavy rain remains offshore with these predecessor events. And that's good news. But still, you're getting impactful conditions here in the same areas that were impacted by Hurricane Laura. So Cameron Parish likely getting some onshore flow, and that onshore flow is going to increase as we go through this evening, overnight tonight, and through tomorrow. You're going to have much more onshore flow, whereas today you're talking about mostly shore parallel flow, and you're still getting surge. So as this tropical cyclone slides off to the west, you're going to see it development of more of that onshore flow, southerly component coming in to Cameron Parish, all the way down through Bolivar Peninsula, down through Galveston Island. And so that's the concern over this portion of the shoreline. So thank you everybody for tuning in to my weather report today. I'm going to try to do these a lot more frequently. These are made possible by the supporter community here as well. So be sure to check out our group. We call ourselves the Team Dominator community. But definitely your support makes our research possible. It makes the subsonic sensor possible, the storm surge sensors, live storm chasing, and these live meteorological briefings. And I'm going to transition toward more of educational content as we go toward the winter, when I'm doing less storm chasing, but more of this type of weather briefing content. But thank you, everybody. Thank you, supporter community. And I hope you guys enjoy my weather reports. And I hope that everybody stays safe along the coastline as Tropical Storm Beta is approaching.